Sorry about that, folks. I think the hail's coming. It looks really bad out there. No, I know. That's why I took my car home. But I'm anticipating things from the last go-around, but it's really quite cool, and the clouds are moving in, so I want to be safe. So we're going to call the Council Budget Committee meeting to order for September the 6th. We have minutes. I had a chance to review them. Everybody else had a chance to review them. Can I get a motion, please?
Motion to adopt.
Thank you, Councillor Burley. All those in favour? That's unanimous. The consent agenda, is there anybody that would like to see the second quarter cash investment report? No, you're clear on everything? Okay, can I get a motion to accept? Thank you, Councillor Haig. All those in favour? It's unanimous. For agenda reports, 4.1 2016 second quarter budget update, Palki. Whenever you're ready, please.
Good evening, Mayor Brown and committee members. The 2016 second quarter budget update is for presentation here. The quarter two results for 2016, we're seeing a surplus of $422,590, which is very minimal compared to this year's operating budget. At the end of quarter one, our surplus projected was $58,000. Some of the decline in the revenue streams at the end of second quarter have been decreased interest revenue and natural gas franchise fees for a total of $325,000, anticipating a $550,000 reduction in the revenue for AMSQ board declaration to not distribute dividends. Building inspections permitting activity for the second quarter is projecting a reduced revenue of $445,000. For building permits based on the current economic conditions. We're seeing similar impacts in the planning department revenues, with $150,000 lower than budget due to slow subdivision activity, and engineering department revenues $111,000 lower than budget due to less acres being developed. Overall, Genesis Place is projecting to be on budget. Second quarter results are showing a net decrease of $164,000 in revenues for Genesis Place, majority of which is due to the lower sales of annual passes and admission fees of $336,000 due to the slowdown. This is being offset by savings in personnel costs, purchased services, and utilities for the amount of $202,000. Transit is also projecting to be on budget. Second quarter results are showing a net decrease of $322,000 in the transit cash fares, majority of which is due to the low ridership on regional services, including ICE. This is being offset by contracted services due to lower fuel prices in the amount of $272,000. Some good news. The city received $151,000 as a WCB Alberta surplus distribution to all employers from the 2015 year end. We are also seeing higher police fines revenue of $346,000 for this year due to the implementation of the supplemental program for the 4 watches and Safe City Road program. Fleet is projecting lower fuel expenses by $108,000. Roads is projecting savings in contracted services for winter operations based on mild weather conditions of $105,000, plus the low power consumption for traffic signals and street lights of $111,000. A delay in the hiring of the new RCMP officers, as well as receiving a credit of $149,000 for the 2015 year adjustments. We're projecting a savings of close to $250,000 in the policing agreement costs. Budgeted amount of $100,000 for the 2018 Winter Games will not be required in 2016, but will be rebudgeted for the 2020 Games. Overall, we're seeing personal cost savings of $383,000. This is out of a $49.5 million total budget for salaries, wages, and benefits. For utility operations, for water, sewer, and waste and recycling services are all on track with budget, and expected utility contributions to the operating fund will be met. For capital, the slide shows the total capital budget as at June 30th, lists all the capital budget amendments that have occurred in the first 2 quarters of this year, bringing the total approved capital budget at $99.5 million. Actual spent to end of June is $12.5 million. Just handing it over to Lucy for a quick summary of Q2.
Just through the chair, I just at this point just wanted to just give an overall bit of information on the results that we're seeing for Q2. As Palki has mentioned, it's a really small surplus that we're seeing, less than that half percentage point. As we do this review as administration, we're not really feeling like we're out of rough waters sort of thing. So we just wanted to make sure we communicated to the committee that we are still managing this budget in a very conservative fashion. We had, if you do recall from Q1 reports that we brought forward, there were some positions that we had frozen. We had requested that our training dollars be rolled back, and a few other mitigating factors out there. We are still maintaining those mitigating sort of factors out there, and we're going to continue to do that as we move forward. We're going to monitor our budgets really carefully, and we're also going to continue to explore other ways that maybe we can possibly defer some expenditures. Q2, it's still early in the year. It's hard to tell with this economy right now what Q3 and Q4 is going to bring, especially as we look at our development in our community. So we just want to make sure that we're being quite conservative and careful as we move forward.
The last would be recommendation is to accept the 2016 second quarter budget update for information, and this report will be on the consent agenda for tonight's council meeting as well. Questions?
Can I just go? Okay, thank you. Just wondering about the winter games. Is there a reason why you didn't just cut it in half and say do $50,000? Or are you planning to bring that back to council so it's not so much of a huge hit so that we can save for it over the next 4 years versus 2?
It'll be part of the surplus if it was to sit in the reserves anyways, so we could bring it back on. But we have to rebudget it for going forward in the 2020.
Okay.
Yeah.
So as it sat before, it was part of the operating budget?
Yes.
But if it goes into the reserves, then we'll just pull that money out of the reserves?
I guess if I could add to that, for 2016, and because what we were seeing there for the reduced revenue from development, that's where most of our hole is coming from for 2016. It was an item, since we're not doing the Winter Games until 2020 now, that it was just an opportunity to make up pieces in the operating budget. We do have that's why we were taking it into account in order to be able to mitigate what we were seeing as a potential deficit there. And we definitely will have to continue to plan for that in the future. That can be an option as we get to year end and we get our final results. Well, possibly maybe we could take part of, if we're lucky enough to have a piece of a surplus at the end of the year, that we can maybe take some of that and put it away in order to plan for that. It is a future expenditure to plan for. It's $300,000 by the time we get to 2019 or 20, don't remember when we'd have to lay out that, the payments. 18, 19, 20.
Okay. Thank you.
Sorry, that's 20. Any other questions? Councillor Burley? Nope. Nope, okay. Sorry, I'm having trouble opening up my screen here. I'm going to have to come back to my questions as soon as I can figure out how to work my iPad. So from here, can I get a motion to receive 4.1, please? Councillor Bellick, all those in favor? That's unanimous. Thank you. 4.2, the budget process deliberation dates. Lucy.
It's a Good evening, Mayor Brown and members of the committee. We have a presentation, so just as it gets going. Thank you, Carrie. Sure. Good evening again. So this agenda item, it marks the beginning of our 2017 budget process for council and from the council and budget committee perspective. And it just feels like yesterday that we were sitting in this room going through 2016, how time flies. So it is typical at this time of year and at this point in the budget process to have discussion with the committee on where yourselves as elected officials are seeing the 2017 budget end up. As well, this is the time to discuss franchise fees. With the process change here, things are a little different, and I'll explain that as we get further into the presentation. The budget process annually is very intensive with many resources dedicated to it. I do believe the committee is aware of the amount of time that is spent on getting to an approved New Year budget, as well as the importance of this task considering the function a budget plays for a municipality. There are many administrative and council hours that go into the production of this package annually. So any synergies or efficiencies that can be gained by having two-way conversations at an early stage will help. The more awareness that administration has of the committee's wishes and thoughts around the New Year budget, the more efficient the September SLT deliberation can be. We start that tomorrow. Just in this way, the more that I understand more fully the committee, what the committee members are looking for when you get to that November and the budget deliberation, the more chance that I feel I'll have in order to be able to direct our staff just to get all the important information at the table for you so that you can make some community decisions around it. So that's the purpose of this particular meeting, or this agenda item, I should say. I do have 7 items on the agenda. Just go over the projections prepared last year, talk about our dim economy a little bit, discuss franchise fee, just give a very high-level overview of the pressures in this coming budget, and then have some discussion. As a part 2, we want to touch on the 2017 budget deliberations dates as well. So this city, for upwards probably about 20 years now, we do prepare 3-year operating budgets annually. And as noted in the 2016 budget, this municipality will continue to face budget pressures and revenue shortfalls. The projections coming out of the 2016 approved operating budget showed a deficit for 2017 of almost $4 million. Can help. Just an interesting note there, even looking forward to 2018, shows us needing $140 million to operate this city. And I just recalling and reflecting on how the budget was less than $50 million when I started here, which will be almost 10 years going into next year. So it just shows the operations of the city practically tripling over that time period. And it's just a fact that helps us to see just how much growth the city's gone through. So just as we start here, obviously with our Q2 results, and you've had Tom Pelkey's presentation around where the surplus is at, and you can just imagine for our finance staff, our budget managers, what you're seeing in 2016 operating budget, obviously it helps in order to prepare those projections for 2017's budget as well. So the economy. The economy in this province continues to struggle. Not much movement as yet in the price of oil. However, the analysts note that some sense of stability is currently in the market. You can see in the graph that exports from Alberta have dropped significantly. I think we're all aware of that. The outlook for 2017 is predicted to be a slow and steady climb. The cost of living is expected to be at about 1.6%. Unemployment's at some of the highest in this province. And however, there is 2% growth that is projected for 2017. Some of the assumptions going into the 2017 budget are as follows. We are looking to develop 160 acres. This is down 20 from 2016. The number of dwellings is down again by 130 units. Our population projections are at 3.5%, 4%, and 4% for the 2 future years. Paul was saying earlier this morning, doesn't remember the last time that we had growth projected at 3.5. Just a reminder, it's still not sustainable since 2% is supposed to be sustainable. Our parcel growth is still looking to be about 4%, and the cost of living that we've used in our budget calculations is 1%. So September is normally the time when administration would bring forward to this committee and council recommendations for the next year's franchise fees. This timing was necessary due to the timelines associated with the process to increase rates. This timing was difficult. The timing was difficult at times, considering the committee had not seen the full budget picture, and thus I'm sure at times it must have felt like you were asked to make a decision without all the information being at your table. So the good news is that since we now have a new Fortis agreement, which came to you earlier this year, the timing has changed. And what this is going to allow us to do is to bring you all that information when you're deliberating your budget. You can also think and talk about and deliberate around the Fortis franchise fee as well. Our franchise fees and interest is a big part of the operating fund budget. It's a big revenue piece out there. The city's ATCO franchise fee is in line with our benchmarks at 29.6%. And I'm sure the committee recalls that administration advocates for building the Fortis franchise fee to a level that is in line with benchmarks. This fee is currently at 13%, where other comparable communities are closer to that maximum allowed, and that's 20%. A 1% increase in a Fortis franchise fee will garner about $250,000 in additional revenue to the fund. Just a note as well on interest revenue, the economy is putting downward pressure on interest rates, and as such, our projections for 2017 are showing $200,000 less in interest revenue. At a high level, these are some of the pressures being seen in the budget. The expenditures required to support tax-based services has increased 5%. This is not unusual, and actually is pretty typical for this number to be around the percentage of growth. Remember, growth in their community for 2016 was more than that 5%. As administration, we were happy to see that our additional tax revenue from growth was $2.1 million. The downside of that is, unfortunately, it feels that at the onset of looking at this budget, that the $2.1 million in extra tax dollars is being eaten up with what we're seeing on the reduction side of some of our development revenue. Our revenues associated with growth, such as planning, building inspections, are down. Other revenue lines from transits, Genesis Place, etc., typically are also on the downside, typical in what you were seeing in the 2016 quarter two analysis. I'd also like to ensure I point out the pressures to the future. 3-year budgets are prepared for a reason, and for this city, it's an unwritten practice, really, that if there's any needed tax rate increases, that we normally try to incorporate them gradually as much as possible in order to avoid in the future to have to put out large increases in any one given year. So I've highlighted a few of those areas for future community needs, including additional fire halls, tax dollars to support operations of a larger library, community safety, and also our priority around asset management. The committee and council have begun a great practice of funding the tax stabilization reserve. The reserve will have a balance of $946,300 by the end of 2016. So this picture, Scooby-Doo and gang always seemed to know where they were going, and I'd just like to propose some discussion now around providing administration with some direction from the committee's point of view of where they would like to see the 2017 operating budget. And just some of the items that are helpful, of course, center around where you're foreseeing tax revenue increases landing, potentials for our franchise fees. Human resources is a very large item in our budget. Obviously, we do provide our services for the most part with our people. We have unionized contracts that are settled. We have our ununionized staff. We're trying to keep our staffing increases to as minimal as possible. I'm also reminded in my report that the budget will be proposed on our existing services to the community. It's not in the purview of administration to reduce services nor the service levels. It's the councils who determine what the community will receive for the tax dollars that we receive from our citizens. I am very much aware and understand the hardships that this community is facing at this time in this province, and as a result of the downturn in the economy. And I can also understand council's wishes not to add a burden of increased taxes to this as well. So I just want to ensure that the committee has all the relevant information at the deliberation table. This budget will be looking to balance the realities of what you're seeing in our economy today with the needs that our citizens have for municipal services. So that's all I had at this point. I'll just pass it back over to the chair for any possible conversation, discussions, etc. And then we can proceed as a part two as we have it here, if we can just touch base on the dates before we leave.
Let's deal with the dates first. Does everybody have a chance to see the dates? Any conflicts? Councillor Haig, or sorry, Deputy Mayor Haig.
Thank you, Your Worship. There is for me on the 18th and 19th, and I think I've raised that as a flag earlier in conversations.
Two dates that had a conflict is the 18th and the 19th of November.
That would be correct. Councillor Hunter's not here, but I don't think he had a problem with those dates. Or as Councillor Chapman, I don't think he had a problem with them either. I think he was okay. He's fishing. I forgot about him. So, you're away? Sorry. Okay. Yeah, that's all operating too.
We only had one other piece that Pelkey and I commented on, if I could add.
Yes.
And that was, we, over the last few years, we've done the Friday, Saturday thing over the course of those 2 days to try to get through most of that operating budget. If there's any other dates that may work for all members, if it becomes later in the month of November, what we could do is, what likely would happen is we could plan for bringing the budget to the last meeting in December as opposed to bringing it to the first meeting in December. So that's a bit of an option out there.
I'd rather see it come to the first, just in case there's any challenges based on the timing. Councillor Haig, are you comfortable with getting the budget, reviewing it on your own and commenting?
I can do that, Your Worship. I would be available on the next weekend, should we choose to do that.
Next weekend, okay?
The 25th, 26th, I think it is. But again, that make a challenge for your desire to see it brought in the first meeting of December forward to the group. And I can definitely do that, and there's a possibility I could chime in.
Is that a problem? Sorry, is that a problem for you, Lucy, and your team? Just the week prior to deliberations to have it ready for the 5th?
To have it ready for the 5th.
Yep. If we're able to agree on getting together on the, sorry, what date did you say?
Just the week later, Your Worship.
The week later, okay. 25, 26.
25, 26.
I guess I just note that really the challenge are the timelines around agenda setting.
Yes.
Yep.
But I guess as I sit and think about it, it's, we sit through CBC and all committee members, you're aware, obviously you're the same people that sit there at council, so you're aware of what's going to be coming forward.
And also that one
Yeah,
extra
I guess-
meeting. That's right.
Paul?
Yeah, sorry. Through the chair. It is more our system to give council the advance notice to get an agenda package together, get it out to you well ahead of time. But, if there's some openness in this particular case, since you would have seen it or reviewed it, those two meetings, and we're open to bringing that on. I don't know how that would look with our agendas. You would probably still see it around the same time. And we would have had a chance to vet it because we would have vetted together. It's possible, I guess.
Changes won't be in the agenda setting.
Sorry, Councillor Coulson.
Thank you. Councillor Haig, are you gone that whole week?
No, it'll be the Thursday evening, Friday, and all day Saturday.
So is it possible for us to go through some of the big items in the evenings, maybe 2 nights the week before, and then have one day that Councillor Haig has to miss? Instead of having 2 full days, we can chop it up into a couple of evenings so that he can attend. I don't know, I don't have in my calendar what everybody's board meetings look like for November, but I'm wide open at this point.
What about the Sunday? Is that a possibility? Because unless people have church. Start on, so the 18th would start on the 20th. And then we could do a couple of meetings in the evening to get through it.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. I just thought maybe instead of doing 2 full days, if we could chop it up a bit or get through some of the important
So first
stuff.
of all, we're good from October to November 7th and from November 23rd to December 5th, right? Sorry, the 23rd will be as needed. But we're good up until then. So what, maybe what we do rather than debate it tonight, we could, I'll have Barb set something up with you guys tomorrow, and then we'll send it out to council and see if we can make a dates work. Otherwise, we can keep it the same.
So I just
Councillor Haig.
want to just state that, you know, my desire is not to hold anything up. What I would hate to see is it for it to be chopped up too much so that you don't have that flow of debate that I think is important. So, you know, if that doesn't, if some of those dates don't work for everybody else, then I would be comfortable, as you said, you know, being part of the debates prior and after, and then if possible, I can, you know, see as much as I can during those days that I could, you know, check things out on YouTube as everybody else would be able to do that.
Yep.
I think, like I said, I think it's important that, you know, again, you not 100% of the people can be there all the time for each meeting, but it's my desire to be here for as much as possible, Your Worship.
Okay, perfect. Councillor Burley.
I don't see the big issue with the 25th and 26th, Your Worship, myself, because it can still be, with agenda setting, it still can be booked for the 5th meeting, and we'll know on the 25th and 26th whether we have to pull it from the agenda or not at that time.
Oh, no, I'm
So
just,
agenda setting
I'm
would-
putting it back
if
to
would
these
still
guys.
work with
'cause
you guys.
if they get all the information they need, but as you can see, we may need more time as needed, right? We
Yeah.
probably don't, but there is that possibility. That's the only dilemma with that, pushing the date. And my only concern with going the end of the month is something might happen, right? We want to make sure it's in the calendar year that we get this thing approved.
And I guess I'll just add, well, whatever dates work for council staff, I think we'll try to make, we likely can change and accommodate what works best for council. The pieces around the agenda for the first meeting in December, as long as legislative services is okay with, we may have to deal with this particular item separately and not with the rest of the agenda, and as long as Sharon's okay with that, which she's nodding and she's okay, we will make it work. And yeah, so Pelkey's just thrown out here if you wanted to do a Sunday and a Monday, it's possible. If you want to do 2 full days, she's noting that we have a CBC meeting on the 21st anyways. So whatever works for the committee, whichever days in that third week of November, and it sounds like we can do what we need to do in order to make that first meeting in December.
Doesn't Alan do Saturday church? That's why he doesn't come to our Saturday
Yeah, he's
meetings?
Seventh-day Adventist, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so maybe Sundays.
No, I think he'll finish his church and then come to the meeting afterwards, I think is
Oh,
what he's
okay.
done in the past.
Okay.
But I'm thinking about in the past, Lucy, we have not really had the need for that third meeting. We've got everything done on the Saturday, pretty much wrapped up, I think, right? If I recall correctly. So I'm okay with Barb sending a note to everybody to see if we can make it happen the following week, because I respect Kelly's, Deputy Mayor Haig's opinion, so I'd appreciate it if he's able to be here. But, yeah.
25th, 26th.
Yeah, and as long as it doesn't impact Councillor Chapman and Councillor Hunter, I think we make that change. Well, there's Councillor Hunter. Are you okay to move this to the next weekend? That'd be the 25th. You're okay? Perfect. Okay, then we just have to cover off Councillor Chapman and we're good to go. And you guys are okay with that? Sorry, you girls are okay with that? Okay. Excellent. So, Lucy, can you go back to your other slide before this? I just need clarification on one of the statements, and it was just around, so administration cannot determine level of service to the community. So can you just sort of help me with that? Because in the past, we've always sort of, you've come to us and said, this is the car we're going to provide, this is how many doors we have, this is the size of the engine, this is what we need you to support. So why wouldn't that process still be good the way we've done it in the past? Because we've really never given guidance on a, 2%, 5%, whatever that number is in the past. I'm just trying to put it square in my head as to how we're going to sort of guess what you might need depending. And I know you've done some high-level conversations and you guys have a good idea of where we sit, but anyway, if you could elaborate, please.
Just through the chair, what we're seeing in the budget, it's in 2017, there's not a whole lot of room there. So when I speak about what is the purview of administration and what needs to come as direction from council, and we're talking services, an example of that would be, so when we look at something like Genesis Place, for example, as administration, we can't declare that Genesis Place is only going to be open 5 days a week in order to deal with the budget problem, right? That is going to the place where as administration, we're deciding what is the services that are provided to the community. I do level of service, and the services that we provide out to the community is something as we move forward to future years that we definitely want to be able to bring more awareness to actually go through exercises so we have greater clarity in our budgets of what it is, clearly the services that we're providing to the community, and what are the levels of services within that service as well. So that is something we're going to work on as we move forward. Currently in our budget, we, as I've described with Genesis Place, we have also levels of services that we administer for road services and snow clearing and those pieces, right? As administration, it is not our role in order to decide for the community what services we will provide for tax dollars. I understand that there's some leeways in that, and there's a little bit of gray area, but I do think as we're coming forward with this budget, there may be some difficult decisions that need to be made around, depending on where we want to see our how much tax dollars we do want to be collecting out there, how much tax increases we want to have out there. We may have to pull back on some of those, on some of our services that we currently deliver. And we can make recommendations as administration, but we cannot pull them out of the budget unless council gives their blessing on that.
Councillor Coulson.
So are you asking for us to give you some direction now as to what we want to see cut moving forward?
To the chair, I wouldn't suggest that at this point. What I would want to have is more of that higher level discussion around where do you see the budget lying. We do have a large gap out there. It's helpful as we go through September as senior leadership in order to try to focus and steer what our proposed budget is closer to what it is that you're expecting. Where we want to be landing tax rate increases is very helpful. If you're looking for a 0, if you're looking for a 2, if you're looking for a 4, if you're looking for nothing more than a max of X, that's very helpful, because then what we can do, I think at this point, is extremely unlikely that we can come back to this table with our proposed budget at a 0. It's highly, highly unlikely. I can't see it at this point. So by letting us know where your comfort level is with that, we can prepare better, more full information in order to bring back to the table so that you can have everything in front of you to make decisions.
Thank you.
Thanks, Lucy. Councillor Hunter.
So through the chair, can you clarify, so when you say we have to have a certain level of tax increase in order to fund the current level of service, that would indicate that we're not adding any additional, but we still need to bring in more revenue to provide the same level of service that we're currently providing now? Is that what I heard?
That's a good summary, correct.
Okay. So I guess the challenge that I hear is, I liken it to a conversation I had in Ottawa where they talked about doing a good thing for veterans by bringing them to at or above the poverty line. Well, that sets the stage right there. So when I always hear in budget, what level of tax increase are you comfortable with? My preference would be to hear what tax levels are our citizens and our councils prepared to live with as opposed to increase, because that, in this economic time, as soon as I say increase outside of these doors, I've got people panicking. And so I would caution that we might want to maybe take that increase piece out and just say tax levels. Just point of clarification.
Okay. Anybody else want to jump in, turn their light on, leap into the conversation? Okay. That's not giving you much direction. So I think there's a lot of stuff to absorb, at least for me. I'd like to have a chance to kind of really mull this over. I went through it in greater detail, and I'm sorry I can't get my screen to work properly, but rather than just sort of throw something together as whatever a number might be, to me it's all about justification, and you guys have done that every year since I've been here, and providing all the details. I wouldn't see why we wouldn't continue going down the same route, but I do appreciate all your commentary about the economy. We know it's tough out there. We're hearing from a lot of people that actually the end of this year will be actually worse than it's been for a lot of families and a lot of people and a lot of businesses. We saw the numbers in Calgary, like over 4,000 businesses going under. The foreclosure rates are climbing. Those numbers haven't even really been released in our community or in Calgary or other larger centers yet. So the impacts of the economy, I don't believe we've actually really been hit yet. But I'm having real trouble. I understand what you're saying, Lucy, but I couldn't say to you right now, well, let's cut back on this or cut back on that, or we don't need that many people now because our business is off a third. I'm not in that position to make that call. I don't have all the information to make a good decision. So I don't know how much direction I'm able to give you, or from the looks of things, our council's able to provide you tonight on this topic. But there are two people who want to talk, and Councillor Coulson, your light was on first, and Paul,
Thank you,
go ahead.
Worship. I think that you said it best when it's difficult to not know exactly that detail that's coming forward. I mean, I know what you can think of, what your residents say and what people in the community say that they can live with. But at the end of the day, if we need more police and we need more services and we have a snowstorm and we have all of these things that happen, we have no control over that right now. So it's hard to say. I don't want to tell you, I'm great with a 1.9 or a 4.5, because without seeing what staff are bringing forward, I don't know how I can give you that. But, I mean, I know that in my experience on this council the past few years is that we really look at that percent. So I understand why you've come to us to ask, are you stuck on a percentage? Are you saying no more than 1.9, you don't really care what we bring forward? Or are you... I get what you're saying. I can't give you that answer right now.
Yep.
But I appreciate that you're asking that question, because we've kind of done that to ourselves, in my opinion, with some of our deliberations and our feedback.
If I can just, sorry.
Yeah, no, go ahead, Lucy.
I even, obviously very much even appreciate that discussion and conversation, and I can see where that's coming from. And that's great as well, because maybe going through the whole deliberation process, that is how you as a council want to walk through it, by having all the information in front of you. And it's interesting, I do have a final slide here just about the workshop that's coming out for our fiscal sustainability framework. And I think working through that framework and getting more deliberate about putting into policy and procedure what some of our longtime practices have been about how we actually increase, say, tax revenue out there, what our goals for our franchise fees are, how and what goes into a tax stabilization account, and when we use that. I think that'll really, really help with clarifying direction for us as administration and future administrations as well. And that will make the whole budget process much more efficient as well. So I'm looking forward to those conversations and working through the whole fiscal sustainability framework, because I think that'll alleviate some of the us coming at this time of year in order to get some better direction, to be able to have a good process that we're going to go through in September. And that maybe not being the way that you as council want to be walking through it, or it may not be the best way for you to walk through it. So, what you're saying.
Well, and this council is very aware of fire halls and what they cost, and new libraries and such. So, yeah, no, we know we've got lots of pressure coming for sure. Paul, and then Councillor Hunter, please.
I guess just through the chair, a couple comments. Lucy used words like what you may be comfortable with or what's palatable. I don't think that has to nail a specific number, but maybe and I'm probably getting that there's some openness that the gap that we're seeing can be closed with both revenue and, of course, trimming some of the expenses and costs, and you're going to have to weigh that as you go in. But there is a significant gap here, which was projected. It's real. We're starting tomorrow. And I think there are going to be some tough decisions that we're going to go through. My recommendation to Lucy and Pelkey today was that we track those, so at least you know what we're bringing in terms of how we got to where we got in terms of if there's any cutbacks. But as Lucy said, overall, in terms of a policy level, it's council on behalf of the community decides the services and the service level you want to provide the citizens. We pretty much go on what we think we need to deliver those services as is, and that's where we're going. We'll identify if there's anything new, but we'll also identify if there's potential we can cut back here and what that savings is or so the idea was here again to generate a discussion or even ranges of comfort level, knowing that it's a difficult time out there right now.
So, sorry, just a quick question, Paul. So we got 3,000 new customers, right? And you use that term. So 1,000 of them are infants, which they're not looking to have potholes filled. They're not really a burden on the city of Airdrie. So that changes that argument to 2/3 requiring our services. So I'm trying to understand what services that we're providing for 1,000 new babies in the community who are part of our census. So if there is a $4 million gap and you're working off the 3,000, where's the dollars and how are they being directed? That's what I'd like to know.
I think if I got your question, in my view of the world, it's a cumulative over years. You have growth rates that add 2,000, 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 people. I haven't analyzed demographics, but as time goes on, whether they're seniors or families or babies, they require services. And you require, as you grow, to build roads, infrastructure, and maintain those things. So it's, I think it would be very difficult to separate those demographics as they relate to specific, in some cases, specific services. I haven't really thought of the question you're posing. I think it's a more complex answer than that.
Well, I'm just looking at growth, which is the factor for the gap. There's a $4 million gap based on the growth, but the growth are not being impacted by 1/3 of those new residents. There is no impact. They're not asking for roads to be fixed or grass to be cut. I guess I'm trying to understand the math and how it works. So you've identified a gap. So sorry, Lucy, if you want to chime in.
Add a couple of things to that
Sure.
Conversation, and it's interesting when you're in a municipal world and what does drive that growth. And I do think sometimes the pure number of people that you have coming into the community will drive some services, and that would be in my mind things like you have a lot of talk out there about another recreation center on the west side, for example. Well, to me, that's a piece of family type of activity that drives more want out there for that type of community need, as would be families, and I would use probably plain old number of new people that we have coming into our community that would drive things like a library as well. You also have other things, and the reason that we always put out there what is our parcel growth, customer growth sometimes as well, and those types of figures drive other types of activity. If you can just imagine, and lots of times we go out there and do our benchmarks and we say, oh my goodness, look at that community over there. They only have 500 or 300 supplementary assessments out there where we have 1,000, right? It's things like that with all those new things coming on that drive activity for this city, whether it's now you have to go in and put a new meter into a home, right? You have to go do the inspections out on those homes. We have to set up a new tax account. We have to set up a new utility account. You have to deal with that customer. Those pieces is what keeps us hopping all of the time. So that's what drives, and there's different factors that drive our activity in this municipality. And the other interesting fact is that it's also always lagged the activity that all the homes and all the people going into the homes from last year is a lot of times what we are seeing as you are in the following year, and some things will drive the year after that. And I know we'll have this discussion at fiscal sustainability time and what's happening in our particular budgets and how our revenue streams are generated inside of our budget. We have a revenue problem because we rely on that development money, and we have for many years. It helps us to balance our budget. And that's all fine and dandy when you're always seeing your development and your growth continue to go up. It's not such a very good feeling when it starts coming down, and that's what you're seeing right now too. You have an additional $2.1 million worth of growth revenue in there. It's been offset now because we are down hundreds of thousands of dollars on our development figures that are coming in for building inspection, for planning, et cetera, and we put some of those up there. So that's part of our problem. All comes down to your basket of goods. Council decides what you want in that basket of goods, and if that's what we want to provide to the community, then we need to pay for it. So it's a balancing act there, and it's tough when it's an economy like this because I think citizens rely on our municipal services a lot too, so it's hard.
Just to clarify, the $4 million gap today has nothing to do with the future recreational center, right? That's not even in the scope from what I've seen. It's certainly not in the next 3 years. But that $4 million that you're looking for next year, that has nothing to do with the future rec center, right?
That's correct. There is no future rec center incorporated in that.
No, you're just using it as an example.
I'm just using that as an example,
No, and
but there's other things.
We're all very aware of the future and what the babies are going to require in schools, but that's not our jurisdiction. You guys have offered up a $4 million gap. You should be able to define what that is, because everybody expects certain things, right? You come in, you pay your bills, you get your pothole fixed, sidewalks are upgraded. There are some things, and we are aware at council level what the service levels are contingent on council. So anyway, Councillor Hunter first, and then Councillor Coulson, please.
So through the chair, I guess when I look at this and it says that the administrative proposed budget is based on existing services, I would take it to mean that that's pretty much based on everything we put together and provided in 2016, correct? So then what I would be looking for in order to provide you with direction as to what tax level we would be comfortable with, if any, would be, so what positions or what dollars did we put into 2016 that weren't used, i.e. positions, projects, anything that was out there that's still on the books, because if you take that and carry that forward into 2017 and those monies haven't been expended, I would suggest that if we didn't do it last year and we budgeted for it last year, the citizens can't miss it because it wasn't there to miss. So I would start at that level to say, let's start looking at those things, whether it be full-time equivalents, any kind of budget projects that we put there but haven't managed to put in place right now. So that I'd like to see that before I can start giving any kind of direction as to.
Thank you. Councillor Coulson.
I just was biting my tongue a little bit because just to think about, the 1,000+ babies that come in that are not requiring potholes to be filled, but those babies are requiring more trips from their parents frequenting our roads. So they do want the potholes to be filled, and their parents are going to be the voice.
Nobody's saying they're not. Yeah.
No, but I'm saying, in per capita, the library is going to need more funding to create more preschool programs and literacy programs, and Community Links is going to struggle, and we're going to have so many of our organizations coming to us with the increase in population and young children that I think it's a little unfair to say that children do not put the same pressures on operating.
I said brand new babies. I didn't say children. I said babies.
Right, but
they're not going to be a burden on the system. The things you're talking about are down the road, but they are coming. I don't disagree with you.
But within 2 to 8 months of life, their parents are going to notice a lot more in their community. I have a 20-something neighbor that just had a baby, and now for the first time she's walking the trails. So she's noticing those things now due to the fact that she had children. So maybe those voices will be a little bit louder and a little more demanding of our city staff due to the pressures that are put on families now.
Yeah, they may be, for sure. Councillor Hagan.
So just to add another voice, Your Worship, to the process and the procedure, I think continuing doing what you've done in the past, saying this is what our needs are, this is what our level of service is, and in order to maintain that, this is what it'll cost us, and then go from there. I think it's unfair to say that we are looking at least me personally, an actual percent when I don't know what that could even come close to at this time.
Any other commentary, questions? Oh, yes, Councillor Burley.
Thank you, Your Worship. When it comes down to the tax increases, it's basically based on what's required by the residents. It should never come down to what we're comfortable with. I mean, we have to make a hard decision. If it's 5%, we have to make that decision, whether in a good time or a bad time, if that's what's required. So it's not what we're comfortable with, it's what's required. And giving an arbitrary number now or setting expectation, I don't think we can do that. As Councillor or Deputy Mayor Haig said, I believe the process we've followed the last couple of years works. It gets us, it gets the debate out there. Some items get lost in it that they're not required or that we can delay for a year. And so that's, I don't like to see a number. Just work at getting it down. That's basically the bottom line.
It would be interesting, though, to capture what Councillor Hunter said. So everything that's moved forward from last year, we're assuming is part of the $4 million and the projections, right? The stuff that we approved last year that hasn't come to fruition this year, FTEs, things like that. Is that part of the $4 million gap? Or is that over and above?
So what you're seeing with the positions that we've held and holding off on some of our projects that are out there, that has helped, that has brought you to the place for your Q2 projection to the end of the year. That has filled that gap. It is not part of that $4 million that you're seeing there.
Okay.
But I appreciate Alderman Hunter's comments, because that is one of the options out there. We will continue to be conservative as we move through 2016. You're likely going to see that there's a few things that we had on our books, whether it's a study here or some other piece somewhere else, that we pushed off and aren't going to do. That can come, that may or may not work into a surplus figure for 2016, and if it does, then we also have those choices. As I said, you as a council, you started to create that tax stabilization reserve. We can designate some pieces that we say for 2016 to help us in 2017. So that is one of your options out there. And also, as you go into 2017, and there's a number of pieces of planning in there that's related to some strategies and some other initiatives, and then those can be laid out and we can make some decisions around whether or not we move forward with them in light of what 2017 looks like.
Thank you, Lucy. Councillor Coulson. Just
really good discussion. I was going to say that I think that staff have done a really good job of saying, you know, this is an initiative we didn't do this year, and this is why we have a surplus in the budget, and moving forward we can put this off for 2 years or 5, or we're not looking to doing it because it's an out-of-date practice. So I think you do a good job at that. But I guess just some takeaway from me would be that if you're going through the justification process, that you make sure you're justifying that those dollars need to be spent or those staff need to be brought on. If it's a department that, you know, we're hearing in the community has problems with, and we hear that a lot. We hear complaints every day about city staffers, that we make sure that that's going to better that department, and that, you know, you're working towards it so it justifies those dollars to put there. But.
Okay. Sorry, Councillor Hunter, and then we're out of time, and we need to talk about the generator. So
Yeah, just a couple things. So first and foremost, I can tell you on some of the citizen engagement I've had across this community, regardless of what reality is in the economy facing, the fear out there, the fear of the unknown, the fear of January 1st this year with those types of things that are coming towards us, whether it be the carbon tax. I don't know what the impact of the carbon tax is going to be on the projects in our organization. I can tell you right now, because of the tanked economy, our calls to the Calgary Police Service across our portfolios have increased threefold. Our calls to bring in security people to look after our assets right now have gone up fourfold. So there's a couple areas in a tanking economy that you're not going to see that until the economy's really on the downturn, but you're going to get all those different things. So to me, as the economy and people get more afraid, those types of things, whether it be vandalism, whether it be damages, break and enters, all those different kind of things go up. So those kind of things are coming, and it's impossible to try to build a budget on things like that because you don't know what's coming and how far. So I just caution that we look after that. Some of the things that I've been asked to deal with over the summer, I can see a significant cost to the city which well could have been avoided, and some of it will be coming up in future council meetings as to how we deal with, again, citizens complain, and citizens complain a lot. Are they frivolous complaints? Are they complaints that we're spending a lot of time and resources on that we need to be strong and stand up and say, no, I find this to be frivolous and we're not going to do anything about it, because there's a cost attached to every one of those files, and as we start pushing them, and I've really seen a lot of funny ones this year. So again, there's money to be had out there. It's going to take everybody working together.
I'm going to have to cut you off. Thank you. Can I get a motion, please, to receive 4.2 for information? Councillor Hunter, all those in favor? It's unanimous. 4.3, and we'd like to invite Chris Reason to come forward. Chris, thank you, Lucy. Thank you, Pelkey.
Good evening, Your Worship and members of the Council Budget Committee. Tonight you're going to be presented, you're being asked to endorse a scope change at the 2 Highland Parkway Municipal Policing Building Generator Project. The generator project was approved back in 2016 through budget deliberations, with the understanding that the Southern Alberta District would pay half of the expenses for that project. Corporate Properties has had numerous conversations with the Southern Alberta District, K Division, up in Edmonton, and they are not able to provide financial support at this point in time. However, Corporate Properties is working with the K Division to see if it's possible to do something on their lease agreement. A municipal police building having a generator on site is a definite asset. Currently, all new construction fire stations have a generator planned and designed and built with its project. The 2016 capital budget included for a larger capacity generator set over at the Main Street lift station, and Parks and Public Works has offered the existing generator as a cost savings effect for the 2 Highland Parkway generator project. An engineering firm has been engaged, or was engaged, sorry, to conduct a feasibility study if that generator could be used for 2 Highland Park, and it was definitely a possibility. High-level estimates with that engineering firm shows savings of approximately $250,000 on that project. Salvage value for that type of generator is roughly $70,000, but to purchase the exact same generator, you would be looking at approximately $250,000. Alternatives for the Council Budget Committee, so not to proceed, as we currently do not have support from the Southern Alberta District. We would lose the savings, and we would, by having no generator on site, the potential for delays to emergencies would be greater. And the other alternative would be to proceed without the Southern Alberta District support. So we would see the savings of a purchase of a new generator, and we would continue to function in all the situations. The Council Budget Committee is asked to endorse the scope change to Project 845, the Emergency Backup Generator Project at 2 Highland Park, and to direct staff to proceed with the installation of a generator. at this time, I'll take any questions.
Hey, Chris, just quickly, you said there may be a possibility of a lease where they're going to pay some of it back. Is that correct? I didn't quite get the end of that.
Well, we're thinking of applying it onto their lease agreement, so as, what do you call that, Mark? Operating adjustments to their existing lease with us.
Sorry, have they agreed to do that?
No,
To
they
amend the
haven't
lease?
yet. No, we're still in conversations with them.
Okay,
about
but right now it's no.
that. Sorry?
Right now it's no.
Right now, it is a no.
Okay,
So we
good.
do not have their financial support right now.
Okay, excellent, thank you. Councillor Hunter.
Well, through the chair, I guess I have a couple questions. So in the event that we have a power failure at the police station, what happens to the cells? What happens to everybody now?
The cells would still remain activated, because it, of course, works off of cell towers, but I guess the not the dispatching, but I guess the computer functionality, so anything that they would.
I think he's talking about the jail cells.
Oh, the jail cells.
Well,
Oh, I
but the whole
apologize, sorry.
facility. So if you have a power failure there, walk me through what happens. If you have a power failure, everybody's using cells to communicate, I'm assuming, so they can still make phone calls. If the bad guys are still caged up and all those things, you go to minimum power on lights, I'm assuming, until.
Through the chair, I believe, and Mark might be able to provide insight, but I believe what happens in an emergency situation, the jail cells open and they kick everybody out the back door. Mark?
Through the chair, my understanding is those actual cells are key locked. They're not
They are.
electronic.
They are, yeah.
So,
But I think they would manually, from what I understand, if there was a fire anyways, if there was a fire, the process is they would unlock the doors and everybody would be kicked out and they would go round up everybody. I would think it would be the same situation if it was a long period of time.
yeah, I think through the chair, there is some backup power, like emergency power, for a very short period of time, and that's just for lighting, those types of things.
Yeah.
I think a fire, yeah, you have to get those people out, but if it's an extended power outage, they'd have a method of detaining those individuals, whether they'd police cars, those types of things. They wouldn't just let them out the back.
So from my understanding, so if the power goes out in there and the lights go out in the cells and you don't have proper HVAC because all of your air handling units shut down, et cetera, and to all your washrooms, et cetera, the RCMP would go into some mode of operation. I guess my concern would be that why would we even ask them to participate in a cost when their contract with us is to catch the bad guys and do what they do with bad guys, and in order to do that, they need 24/7 power, and us as the landlord have every right to give them 24/7 power and put that in as a normal operating cost, which doesn't need negotiation. It should be in their lease. I would suspect the lease reads something like, from time to time, the landlord will be able to make decisions in the operation of the facility, and the operating costs will be passed along to the tenant. Is that pretty much the way the lease reads?
Through the chair, excuse me, there is no requirement in their lease for backup power. There is the possibility as you go forward, if there's some capital investment required, it needs to be mutually agreed to prior to cost sharing.
So we guarantee that in their lease, we're going to provide them power, correct?
Regular power, not backup power. There's no requirement.
No, but does it say regular power? Does it say we will give them power to the facility? Because in my leases, I have, as the landlord, all the time, I have leave to go out there and purchase and do things to make sure that that facility keeps functioning so they can do their normal course of business. And if it's a backup generator, I have the ability to put a portion of the costs over and they only pay for the year that they get to use it. They don't get to pay for the purchase of the whole thing. But every year I can put into their operating costs to pay for the purchase and operation of that, and I'm assuming that you have that vehicle in your lease already.
Through the chair, I think we're saying the same thing. That's what we'd like to do. We just haven't had the ability for them to, I guess, agree to it to some degree. I think we're looking at a nominal fee over a number of years that we can apply to both leases. There's the lease upstairs and the lease downstairs. But I don't think we have that absolute ability just to do the capital investment and slap it on their lease.
Well, can you check that, please? Because again, it's a small fee per month. So if your power goes up or your snow removal goes up, guess what happens? their operating costs go up.
Right.
If the operating costs go up because you as a landlord think that providing a proper level of service to a police department includes 24/7 power regardless of what happens, you should have the ability in that lease to do that. And I'm not saying that they're going to pay right up front the capital cost of that purchase. They're going to pay for the amortize. So if it's $100,000 over 10 years, they're only going to pay for the portion that they pay for in their lease for a bit of the capital cost and the operating cost to keep that thing running. So
And-
can you check that and make
Yep.
sure? Because I'll be very surprised if you don't have the ability in the existing lease to do that.
Absolutely. I'll also make a note through the chair that we are having this discussion with the AUMA when we meet with the management of our CMP. As we had the discussion last year, it was well received, but as you know, the funding had dried up. So we've had it on the list again to entertain that discussion with them this year.
Yeah, a jail with no power just seems to me, that's just, how did we get there? I mean, that's, again, I have remedies in my leases that say I can do that from time to time. They can disagree with me, but at the end of the day, they can't go in arrears while they're disagreeing. You put it on their costs, they get a bill, they have to pay it.
Clearly understood. Thank you. Any other questions for?
Yeah, so I'm kind of confused as to the savings piece, and then we wouldn't have a place to store it. Why would we store a generator indoors if it's going to be operated outdoors when it's in use?
Through the chair, that comment was made essentially if we do not choose to go forward with the generator over at the Main Street lift station would have to be removed and sold, and so we won't have the ability for future use of that generator. So essentially, if we don't use it now, we will have to sell it, and we won't be able to capture that savings at a later date, should we choose to proceed with that.
And so, but the storage of it, what is that?
The storing of it, so we just don't have a facility, sorry, through the chair, we don't have a facility to physically store this generator. It's massive. It's a 500 kVA generator with a transfer switch and.
Yeah. Trailer mount or skid
No,
mount?
it's stationed inside a facility and.
But it's so somebody brought it in there on a skid or?
Not
a
a
skid
skid.
mount?
It's mounted directly on a service pad. Yeah.
Okay. And so, but you can't use that anywhere else?
No. Sorry.
Okay. Thank you.
Councillor Coulson.
I was just going to say that I'm prepared to make the recommendation and just add a bit to it, which was that staff continue to pursue lease agreements over a long period of time versus, hey, can you give us $200,000?
Just curious, has there ever been a power outage in the new building since we've had it?
Through the chair?
Yes.
Yes.
Wow. That's pretty scary. Okay, motion's clear on the floor. Everybody's clear? All those in favor? It's unanimous. Thank you both very much.
Have a good evening.
And we'll call the council budget meeting adjourned. Oh, I apologize. I don't have the second page. We are not adjourned. We have item number 5, and we are going committee of the whole. And I have to ask any of the residents who are present. Oh, actually, you know what, guys? You're fine where you are. We're going to be moving into the other room. Keep your seats, please.